Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, as in the sequel. Hello and welcome back to Meerkat Chris. So it's 2017 now, and it has been 3 years since the first Guardians of the Galaxy hit our big screens. I think it's the 14th MCU film, which includes Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, the Avengers, now Spider-Man, as well as Guardians of the Galaxy, etc. There we go, got the first Guardians of the Galaxy, and my Guardians of the Galaxy top. Here pretty much the entire cast returns, with the addition of a couple extras, such as Kurt Russell and this woman who plays somebody with some antennas. Something? I'll have a look in a minute. But Groot returns as Baby Groot because of the events that happened at the end of the first film. Though to me I find it quite depressing, because is he still the same Groot? Does he have the memories or so, or is he like a clone? Because that's depressing to me. That means that the other one is dead and this is an entirely different person. Well, tree person. Anyway, into the review. Right from the opening shot, I was blown away by how beautiful the film is. The Marvel films get a lot of hatred because of the way the films look, but this one I think kind of has improved a lot. The colours are so rich, they have a huge variety of colours. Because the thing is, the posters and the marketing advertise it as this big, huge, colourful spectacle. You just have to look at this poster, for example, which is amazing. It's pretty much a similar thing to the first poster, but it has a lot more saturated colours, for example. I kind of was worried that that wasn't really going to be a thing of the film, that was just kind of like the marketing side of things, but the film actually looks like this for the most part. The thing about Guardians of the Galaxy, one of its main appeals is its music, classic 70s / early 80s music choices, and it kicks off straight away like this, and it is. We all remember the opening title sequence from the first one, which is where he's all like dancing. Chris Pratt as Star-Lord dancing with his headphones on. This one does something similar, but in a different way, with a lot more going on the screen at the same time. I didn't like it as much, but so much going on in the frame in this opening title sequence that if your eye gets distracted by one thing, you're totally missing something else that's going on at the same time. So there's a bit of rewatch value in that. Like I said, Chris Pratt returns as Star-Lord, our main lead in these films, and just as good as he was in the first one, he's highly charismatic. He's very similar to Han Solo and Luke Skywalker from Star Wars. He's still that perfect blend between them, in my opinion. He's really good at comic relief, as we all know already, but I felt that he helped add a lot more sympathy and emotional weight to the character in this one, especially in some key scenes where it was definitely needed. I thought he had some really nice acting going on there. Well done, Chris Pratt. Well done. You really helped get me immersed in your character. Basically, all around the cast are great. Drax returns from the first one, of course. Dave Bautista plays him, and he's still just a likeable guy in his own way. They introduced this new character, the antenna woman called Mantis, I think? I totally didn't just look that up right then. She's actually a welcome character in her own right, and she is introduced with a little quirk of her own, so she's a welcome addition to this whole Guardians of the Galaxy universe, in my opinion. As well as this, Drax and Mantis kind of have a little nice chemistry going on there. Not necessarily relationship chemistry, just some nice back and forth comedic chemistry that only really works between these two characters, and doesn't really work if you kind of swapped out the characters and put somebody else in the place. It just kind of works between the two. As well, character-wise, there is a return of Merle. I mean, what's his name? Yondu, not Merle, that's something else. They really take his character from the first one and really add some more character development through him, add a lot more depth and likability to him, so another welcome thing for this film. Another great positive is the villain. I really like the villain in this one. It does go a bit overboard towards the end, but I personally preferred him to the likes of Loki. I know Loki has a lot of fans, but I don't know, I kind of liked him. I kind of like this new villain. On top of this, the script is great. It does well at natural conversations, I felt, such as between Star-Lord and Gamora. It's not necessarily comedic dialogue that they have to exchange between each other, but it's a lot more natural and a lot more realistic and grounded, in my opinion, and I personally felt that that was the best type of dialogue in this film. It helps build a realistic chemistry between the two. Now, of course, I'm getting into some negatives now. Let's just get into it. Although I just praised the script for its natural conversations and such, I didn't really find it as funny as the first one, even though the script tries really hard to implement a ton more jokes, and this is kind of an issue for me because anticipating this film I was kind of worried that it would do that thing where the studio basically realised that the first one was a huge success and it realised that a lot of people like the humour and like certain characters in it such as Drax, and I was worried that they would then play on that and kind of try to implement a bit too much more of that into the second one, and they kind of did that and it kind of got a bit distracting and didn't really work as well. Whereas in the first one the humour was a lot more natural. It wasn't actually that common in the first one. It has some great jokes in there, but this one tries really hard every so often to implement a joke in pretty much every situation, and it just doesn't work for me. Like, I mean, there's characters in the film that are actually genuinely unlikable, even as characters. There's these gold ladies in the film. They're a race, I guess, so is that racist? Well, basically there's like this high queen princess sort of one of them who's like the ruler of them all, and she's totally unlikable. You just don't like her. She's just arrogant. She's like a, dare I say it, a BBH. Kind of feels like it's purposeful, but then at the same time there's moments in the film where they try to get the character to make jokes, and because we don't like them as the audience, those jokes just don't work, so then they just become cringy moments out of nowhere and they just become forced, and you're just like left there not laughing at moments that are meant to genuinely be funny, and it just comes across as cringy and unwanted. Talking about trying to get a bit ahead of themselves, I did get the feeling that some of the characters were almost crossing that line of becoming parodies of themselves, which is something you never want in a sequel. But like Drax from the first one was very natural, dry-witted, and didn't really understand humour. He took everything literally, for example, as we all know. In this one they kind of take it to the next level and they try to make a joke out of that sort of thing all the time, and it kind of almost becomes a parody of Drax from the first one, which is a massive shame because I love Drax and he is hilarious in this. I mean, I think Drax has one of my favourite laughs of all time. I mean, you'll see what I mean when you see the film. As well as this, I did feel that the film had a slow pace and not really any memorable scenes at the same time. It's not really as rewatchable as the first one because the first one was a really tight and funny, fast-paced action sci-fi space opera film that I can easily go back to every so often and just watch because it feels like a much shorter film than this one, for example. I felt that the second act kind of dragged a bit. There's a lot of walking and talking, and it's all for character development moments to help push like the story and the setting of the third act, but I don't know, I felt like the first one did it a lot better. And the first one, for example, had the huge prison escape sequence where they had to like come up with a plan and try to escape as a team, all these unlikely heroes binding together to form this plan, and it doesn't really work out for them the way they expected. And at the same time it's very fun and enjoyable to watch, whilst also being pretty creative in its own right. But yeah, there's not really any of that. Like when me and Kathleen left the cinema, I said to her basically that I feel like I'm going to forget a lot of this film, and that's not what I wanted. As enjoyable as it is, because it is an enjoyable film at the end of the day, it does quickly pass the time. There's a lot of likeable characters and there's great humour in it sometimes. And there's even a bit of an emotional weight to the film. I mean, like I said, that Chris Pratt brings a lot of emotional weight to Star-Lord, but there are also some scenes that really utilise this to a great extent. But I didn't feel they implemented the songs as well as they did in the first one, which was a big shame because that was one of the really key points of the first one. Like, they introduce songs and sometimes they feel out of place, and then they don't really go on that long, and you kind of just expected a bit more from them having the music, and it just kind of cuts off and then they just continue with the action scene anyway, and it's a bit jarring, if I'm honest. But yeah, overall, highly enjoyable film, even if it does slow down in the second act. Great characters that are still memorable to this day. It even works on some from the first one and adds a lot more character to them and a lot more depth to the characters themselves, which is always a welcome thing. It made me like Merle. I mean, Yondu? I can't remember. Merle. Blue Merle. That's it. And it has some emotional weight. We don't really get that much emotional weight in the MCU that often, but it's good to see it every so often. Great villain. Another problem I did have with the third act was that it does become a bit more of a case of spectacle over pacing, and I got a bit bored during this whole event going on. There is a few video game references involved, especially in the beginning, that I think us video game fans will get, which is kind of cool. But at the end of the day, it's not as strong as the first film. Anyway, my overall rating for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is 7.4 out of 10. Yeah, not as high of a grade as I gave the first one. I gave the first one an 8.5, but I think it's easily one of my favourite MCU films. I preferred it to Doctor Strange personally. I mean, I've got a review of Doctor Strange out there somewhere on my channel if you want to check that out. I don't know, it's quite old. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you at least kind of enjoyed it, and if you subscribe, then hopefully I can see you in the next video. Bye.